I'm currently sharing a PowerPoint presentation. If someone could please enter in the chat if you can see the PowerPoint, and we'll go ahead and begin. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to wait a minute just so that everyone can join in. I will be muting everyone just for sound quality issues. You have the option to unmute yourself at the end to ask questions. You can also use the chat function to ask your question. If you're on Teams, you can unmute yourself with the mute button. If you're on the phone, you can unmute yourself with *6. Or like I said, you can use the Teams chat to ask your question. So if I could have someone confirm in the chat that you can see the PowerPoint presentation.
I can see it.
Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone just so we don't have any sound quality issues, and then you'll have the choice to unmute yourself at the end. So once again, my name is Leanne Vega. I'm with the U.S. Small Business Administration. And today's presentation will discuss how the SBA is providing assistance for coronavirus-related economic disruption. So we have two main ways. One is economic injury disaster loans, and the other is the Paycheck Protection Program loans. This is a highlight of both programs. I will provide more details. The PPP, as per its name, Paycheck Protection Program, its use is primarily for payroll. You do not need collateral. It can be completely forgiven 100%. You will borrow 2.5 times your average monthly payroll for the 12 months before the coronavirus. And you don't need to make payments for the first 10 months. This has been updated. The disaster loan is still available. There are still funds available via the SBA website. You use this money for working capital. You don't need collateral if you are borrowing less than $25,000. This loan is not forgivable. It is a 30-year note at 3.75%, and you do not need to make payments for the first 12 months. So to reiterate, the PPP loan you apply via your lender, and the disaster loan via the SBA website. The disaster loan, you are eligible if you're a small business that has been directly or the SBA will look at your credit history, your ability to repay, and to verify that you are in a declared county. Almost everyone, well, the whole U.S. territories and D.C. are in the declared county. It is a 30-year note, 3.75% if you're a small business, 2.75% if you're a nonprofit. You can use this money to pay fixed debt, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills. If you are borrowing less than $25,000, you do not need collateral. Over that amount, the SBA will work with the assets that your business has. For the economic injury disaster loan, the funds come directly from the U.S. Treasury. The SBA administers them. You apply via the SBA website, not through a bank. There is no cost to apply, and there is no obligation to take the loan if it's offered to you. If you want to apply, you will access the SBA website. The application process is very simple, and I will go ahead and show it to you now. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure everyone is muted. You'll have the choice to unmute yourself at the end. It just helps with sound quality issues. Okay, so the first step is to enter your business information to include your gross revenue for the 12 months before the disaster. In this case, the declared disaster date is January 31st of this year, and your cost of goods sold for those same 12 months. If there is a red line in the box, you must fill it in. Otherwise, only fill it in if it applies to your business. Some choices are drop-down menus. You must select from the drop-down menus. The next step is to enter your information as the business owner. If there is more than one business owner, you will see at the end of the page, there is a button that says Add Additional Owners. You have this choice. You must click this button to add other owners' information. The next step is to answer yes or no to these 3 questions as they relate, for example, to criminal offenses, etc. The following box has a blue background, and you will only fill that in if someone helped you with this application. This portion of the loan is no longer available. I will mention it, however, because there has been some confusion. The funds for the advance portion of the disaster loan have been exhausted, meaning you no longer have the option to request to be considered for the advance, also known as a grant. However, the loan is still available. It is still a 30-year note at 3.75%. So although the grant portion funds have been exhausted, there are still funds available for loans and you can still apply. If you have already applied and you have questions about your application, you need to contact the Disaster Assistance Customer Service Center at 1-800-659-2955. And I will put this number in the chat for those of you that are on the chat. I see that someone has raised their hand. We can go ahead and if you'd like, we can wait until the very end for questions, or you can unmute yourself now. It's your choice.
Just a quick question. Is this meeting for the forgiveness program?
Yes, sir. We are beginning with the disaster loan, and then we will speak about the PPP next.
Okay. Is it about applying for the PPP, or is it about going over the forgiveness criteria?
Both.
Okay. Thank you.
So once again, if you have already applied, you can call the 1-800 number, 1-800-659-2955. So as far as the Paycheck Protection Program, first I want to reiterate the deadline to apply for the loan is August 8th. That is actually the deadline for the lenders to submit to the SBA. So don't wait until August 8th to apply, because most banks are closing their doors to applications earlier because they need time to process them and submit them to the SBA before the August 8th deadline. So if you have not yet applied for the PPP loan, do so as soon as possible. Also, I have the list of the lenders in the El Paso district area that are 7A approved lenders who can process these loans, and I can send you the list. Please enter your email in the chat and I will send you the list of lenders. So the PPP, again, is for all small businesses. You can borrow up to $10 million. No matter which bank you apply at, the interest rate is 1%. It matures in 2 years. However, if you applied after June 5th, it will mature in 5 years. You do not have to make payments for the first 10 months, and the SBA guarantees this loan. It's designed as an incentive for you to keep your employees on payroll. Again, if you're less than 500 employees, you're typically a small business. You apply through the 7A lenders. I have the list of lenders. I can email you. June 5th, the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act was implemented, and it included the following important changes. It extended the covered period for loan forgiveness from 8 weeks after the date of loan disbursement to 24 weeks. However, if you have already used the money for payroll purposes or you are ready to apply for forgiveness, you do not need to wait for the 24 weeks. Also, the Flexibility Act lowered the requirement that you should use 75% of the loan for payroll purposes. Now you only need to use 60% for payroll purposes. Additionally, if you use less than 60%, whatever amount you use for payroll purposes will become 60% of the total amount forgiven. This means that you will still have a portion of your loan forgiven. It will, however, be reduced. The act also implemented a safe harbor. If you cannot bring your employees back because you are complying with guidelines set by the CDC, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, or OSHA, you will not be penalized. There is also a safe harbor if you try to bring your employees back and they choose not to come back for whatever reason. So you will not be penalized if you can document your good faith effort to bring the employees back and they choose not to. Also, like I said, it increased the maturity to 5 years, and then deferral for the first payment. That has also changed. The first payment will now be due 10 months after the date in which you are informed how much of your loan is forgiven. So it's no longer after the first disbursement. Now it is 10 months after the date in which you are informed how much of your loan is forgiven. And again, the deadline to apply is August 8th. When you're ready to apply for forgiveness, there are 2 forms. They are both on our website and very easy to find. I'm going to show you how to navigate to the forms. If you go to the SBA website, which is very simple, sba.gov, there are 6 tabs at the top of the page. They say Business Guide, Funding Programs, etc. Under Funding Programs, you navigate to Loans, Coronavirus Relief Options, and the Paycheck Protection Program. Once here, you will see the line that says Loan Details and Forgiveness. When you click on that, you will go to this option where it says, click here to download the Paycheck Protection Program application. There is also a Spanish version. Note that this application is dated June 16th. This is the most recent and updated application. Separate from the form are the instructions. You must download both because any questions or issues you have with the form will be addressed on the instructions. You will notice that one form is named EZ and the other form is a standard form. Your first step is to open the EZ form because at the very top it says, you, the borrower, can apply for forgiveness using the EZ form if you can check at least one of these boxes. So your first step is to open this form and read these choices. If any one of these applies to you, and you must read them carefully, the first one is if you're a sole proprietor, you don't have any employees. The next one is if there were no changes in salaries. And the next one is if there's no changes in hours worked, number of employees, etc. So basically, if there were no changes in your status, meaning same number of employees, same salaries, etc., you can use the abbreviated form. Otherwise, you must use the standard form. And once again, make sure you download the instructions and not just the form. You need both. In the El Paso area, we work with our resource partners, the Small Business Development Center, SCORE, and the Women's Business Border Center. Any one of them can assist you with either applying for the loans or applying for forgiveness. Some of them have developed some tools that are very helpful, specifically as it pertains to calculating the hours worked, if you're using full-time equivalences, if you have variances in salaries or hours worked different from 40 hours, 20 hours, there are tools available, and I have them as well. I can email them to you, to include spreadsheets, formulas, etc., to help you process these numbers. I will also encourage you to fill out the forgiveness forms with your accountant or your payroll company, because they will be able to provide you with the most accurate data with regards to payroll and the most accurate documents. And you'll see when you download the forms, specifically when you download the instructions for the forms, that it tells you a list of the documents that must be attached and documents that you must have on file in case you are audited. They will need to see them. So like I said, make sure you download instructions and forms, because you will need to keep those documents, either submit with the documents or keep them on file. We're going to go to questions and answers at this. So you have a couple choices. You can unmute yourself in Teams. If you're on the phone, you can unmute yourself with *6, or you can use the chat option to type in your question, and I will read the question out loud. And while I'm waiting for a question, real quick, I wanted to inform everyone that we have been made aware that people are using the SBA name and logo in a fraudulent manner. If you receive an email from the SBA, always verify that the email ends in .gov. We do not send email from .com, .org, or .help. All of our email will come from SBA.gov. So before you reply to anything and send personal information, double check that the email ends in .gov. And move on to questions and answers. And like I said, you have a couple choices. Our first question says, what items are allowed to be forgiven on PPP? So there is what is called an interim final rule, and it was actually updated today. So today it might actually be called a final rule. Give me 1 second while I open that email. I got it right before this call, so I haven't had a chance to double check it. But there is an update to the final rules. Why can't I find it? Sorry, guys. Here we go. Okay, so it was just released today. The policy was updated. They also updated the frequently asked questions, which is super helpful. I don't see a final rule. I just still see the interim. So I'm going to share with you the link to the interim final rule, because that lists all of the authorized expenses. So you'll see in the chat, and if for those of you that are on the phone, you can actually type in your search bar PPP interim final rule. It will open up a PDF document, and it actually details what are allowable payroll costs and what are allowable non-payroll costs. There is a specific list there. For example, I have been asked before if bonuses are allowable. They are not. So before you start listing your costs and expenses, read through the final rule, interim final rule, because it will tell you exactly which costs are allowable and which are not. Yes, I have a request in the chat to send the name and number of people that are assisting with loan forgiveness. With regards to the loan forgiveness, I understand that a lot of people are ready to apply for forgiveness. I wanted to recommend that you wait a moment for a couple of reasons. As you can see, the most up-to-date document is called the interim final rule, because there's not yet a final rule about forgiveness. Additionally, change in the documents or the criteria, there has been discussion that perhaps people that were borrowed below a certain threshold will use a more simplified form that is being discussed at this time. So you do have up to 24 weeks before you need to apply for forgiveness. I would recommend that people hold on a minute, because even though you have spent the money and you feel like you might be ready, there are still some changes pending in the final process for forgiveness. As a matter of fact, the lenders cannot even start until after August 10th. So at this moment in time, they probably won't even be accepting your forms because they can't submit them to the SBA anyway.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you hear me? About 1099 employees, are they considered forgivable expense?
No, so 1099 employees can apply for themselves as self-employed. They should
Okay.
not be counted as your employees.
And second question is, do you have to use a payroll processor to submit
No.
the? I'm
No,
sorry?
you can do in-house payroll, you can use whatever system you'd like. You just will need to document that it's always been that way, meaning you
Okay.
didn't make a change for this purpose.
Okay, and do you have to pay them via ACH electronic payments?
No, you can show the payment. No, you don't have to do ACH because I think it has an option to document cash or check. No, there's not. There's no requirement for ACH.
Okay, okay, thank you.
So while we're waiting, I'm going to put a couple helpful numbers in the chat box for those of you that are on the phone. One more time, if you have already applied for the disaster loan and you have questions, their number is 1-800-659-2955 and their email is disastercustomerservice@sba.gov. All one word and no spaces or anything. Just disastercustomerservice@sba.gov. And in case someone thinks of a question later on, you can email me directly. And again, I'm putting my email in the chat. You should all have it because it's on the email for today's webinar. But just in case, it is Lee, which is Lee, .vega, which is VEGA, @sba.gov. And if it's easier for you to speak to someone directly, my number is 915-494-7464. We still have time, so you can unmute yourself or type your question in the chat. If you joined us a little later, loans will expire on August 8th, meaning the last day to apply for them is August 8th. So if you have not done that yet, please do so quickly. We have a question in the chat. To go through the SBA. I don't know if I understand your question. That's Ophelia. If you could clarify to go through the SBI loan. What do you mean by that? Which loan are you speaking for, the pay protection program or the disaster loan? For the disaster loan, the term very is, I would say, in about 2 weeks you should be receiving the funds, or you should at least, so you don't just receive funds, you will accept and sign, and then you will receive the funds. After you've signed the loan documents, and that process should take approximately 2 weeks, after you've signed the loan documents, the first disbursement should be within 5 business. We have another question. It says, when they receive PPP and they are a partnership, how much can they take from themselves if there are 2 partners in the? Yes, Marisol, I know. I'm paying for you. I have been looking for an answer that discusses partners, and I have yet to find. Let me do that again while you're here. I can't find that. I've been looking to see if it specifies if the 15,000 is per owner or total. I haven't found anything yet. And today with the updated guidelines, I thought they might discuss that some more. But I haven't seen. Let me look real quick. If I don't find it quickly, then I'll go ahead and I need to ask someone at the Office of Capital Access because they should be able to clarify. However, if it hasn't been discussed yet in a final rule format, then there is not yet an answer, which is a bad answer, I understand. I'm not seeing it right now, so I'll go ahead and get back to you on that, okay, Marisa? And I apologize for the delay. Okay, yeah, as soon as I find something, I will email you directly. Yes, of course, I will also call. Do we have any more questions? So again, if you are ready for applying for forgiveness, the forms are on our website, sba.gov, under Paycheck Protection Program. Okay, so we have another question. It says, if you applied as a sole proprietor using a Schedule C, which indicates that you pay your taxes at the end of the year, are you required to switch and pay quarterly taxes? No. No, I haven't heard anything about a change in tax requirements. As far as for everything I've heard is that there's no need to modify your tax situation. Because even when people were applying, the deadline for 2019 hadn't yet passed, and there was no requirement to have quarterly taxes filed before you could apply. So unless that changed today, which I said I haven't had a chance yet to read. Today I hadn't seen anything that described a change like that. So if you're just joining us, the disaster loan is still available on the SBA website. So deadline for the disaster, because it'll basically be there until the funds are. The PPP, the deadline to apply for the loan is August 8th. Don't wait until the last day because lenders are stopping receiving applications at an earlier date because they have to submit to the SBA. And if you're ready to apply for forgiveness, I do encourage you to wait a moment because there might be changes coming to the forgiveness application process. So I would hate for you to rush to apply for forgiveness only to then have missed out on an opportunity. There's another question. Will there be a second round of PPP? And if we used up the money, can we apply again? So again, that's part of what we have heard. So we have heard that there might be another round of PPP. There might be an option to let people apply again. And there might be a simplification of the forgiveness process. So I hate to keep using the word might, but that at this time, that's all my vocabulary can do. Yeah, so we're just waiting to hear on anything from the Senate, and then the president will sign, and as soon as we have confirmation, we can send that information out. Any updates I get, I share in the webinar or via the same email that you got to log on today. But as of right now, we are hearing possible extensions, possible reapplying, and possible simplification of the forgiveness. So all of that is how much has been expended to date. That's a good question. That's posted daily on our website. Let me look that up real quick. So let me go to the PPP. Sorry, I'm just checking that it's updated daily, the amount that's, okay, so as of today for the PPP, actually August 3rd, so yesterday, 5 p.m. Eastern time, more than 5 million loans had been approved. $521 million had been, no, not million, $1 billion? Well, that's a big number. I'll copy it to the chat for y'all. And 102. You can download on our website by state, and then it tells you over 150,000, under 150,000, and there is a list of who received the loans. It's actually a helpful tool if you're interested in all that. So I'm putting it in the chat now. That is the PPP to date. Well, let me put both lines so you can see what it is you're reading. It doesn't just look like blank numbers. Okay, so you'll see now in the chat, approved loans over 5 million, approved dollars 521 trillion, because that's 1, 2, 3, okay, hundreds, thousands, millions. Yep, billions. And the average loan. So that's up. We have another question in the chat. It says, if we are done using PPP loans and unemployment gets extended, can we go back on PUA? PUA, I'm assuming, is unemployment. I'm not familiar with the acronym. So do you mean yourself as self-employed? You want to know if you're done using the PPP money, if you can go back on. Is that the question?
Yes, it would be once the PP loans are used and if the unemployment, the pandemic unemployment assistance portion, the $600, if that was to get extended and I'm already done with the PPP loan, can I go back on the unemployment?
So you applied as a sole proprietor, you're self-employed?
Correct.
Okay, so once you have paid yourself for a minimum of 8 weeks, meaning you can apply for forgiveness using that data, you used over 60% to pay yourself. In this case, I'm assuming you did, then you're ready to go as far as forgiveness and you have exhausted your funds, then yes, you can go back on unemployment. You just should not be doing both at the same time, meaning you shouldn't continue to pay yourself and also be on unemployment.
Correct. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. So for those of us that joined us a little later, I can email this presentation for you if you missed a part of it. My email is lee.vega@sba.gov. I can also send you the list of lenders in the El Paso district area that can. The disaster loan is still available on our website. Our website is very simple, SBA. And additionally, the deadlines to apply for PPP is August 8th. The disaster loan does not yet have a deadline. As long as funds are available, the site will continue to be open. email is lee.vega@sba.gov. Vega is with a V like Victor. And you have a couple of choices to ask questions. You can unmute yourself in Teams. If you're on the phone, you can unmute yourself with *6, or you can type your question in the chat and I can read it out loud. And a quick reminder, any updated information that I receive, for example, we received some updated PPP frequently asked questions today. I received them right before the webinar, but I'm gonna go through them and see if there's anything new that I can incorporate. So they will be, any information will be updated and or repeated on the webinars Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 2 o'clock Mountain Time, which is El Paso time. And Wednesdays, the webinar is in Spanish. So please feel free to forward the login information, the link, to anyone for whom English is not their first language. And the webinar will be repeated on Wednesdays in Spanish. So if we don't have any additional questions, I'm going to end the audio portion of the webinar. I will remain in the chat. We still have plenty of time, so I will stay there as long as you all need. If you think of any additional questions, feel free to enter them in the chat. Otherwise, like I said, you still have time to unmute yourself if you can think of any questions now. If you think of a question later, you can contact me directly. One more time, my phone number is 915-494-7464 if you would like to speak to me directly. It does appear that we do not have any additional questions. So I will, there was a question. What was the max amount you had said? The max amount for which loan? Oh, for the owner's draw. Yes. Okay. It is 15,000. I will give you an exact amount right now. Give me 1 second. It's on the instructions to download the form. We have another question in the chat about classes in the Dallas area. I'm going to give you the number to the Dallas district office. I don't know what their schedule is for their webinars. Give me 1 second. Let me just find this dollar value for owners. Okay, so it says for borrowers using, okay, enter any amounts paid to owners. It is owners plural. It says if you're using the 24-week period, this amount is capped as $20,833. If you're using the 8-week period, this amount is capped at $15,385 for each individual. So it's $15,000 for each individual if you're using the 8-week covered period, $20,000, and I'm going to copy this into the chat. Look, I found it finally. It only took you asking me more than once. I apologize for that. Okay. So that's the language in the instructions, and you'll see it says, enter any amounts paid to owners, owner employees, a self-employed individual, or general partners. For borrowers using the 24-week period, this amount is capped at $20,833. For borrowers using the 8-week period, for each individual, or the 8-week equivalent, whichever is lower. Okay, so it is for each individual, so for each owner or partner. So just depending on which period, 2008 or 15,003. Do we have a question via audio? Oh, I just said, do we have a question via audio? That was it. I'm looking now for the phone number for the Dallas office in case you need to contact them. Like I said, I don't have the schedule for each individual office, their webinars, but just calling them they should be able to know what their schedule is. Let me find their number. Okay, so I'm going to put it in the chat, and if you're on the audio, the Dallas SBA office, 684-5500. So like I said, so this goes back to what I said earlier about when you download the forms to apply for forgiveness, make sure you download the instructions because that's where most questions can be addressed. And I had been checking the interim final rule for this owner cap, and I should have been checking the instruction. I should be listening to my own advice. So like I said, you all are muted. That's just for sound quality issues. But if you're on the phone with *6 or in Teams. Additional questions, a reminder, the webinars are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Wednesdays, I can email you the PowerPoint. I can email you the lender list. And I will stay in the chat if you think of any additional questions. Otherwise, we'll end the audio portion. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Stay safe, and as soon as I have updated information, I will share it in the webinars. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, we have another question. The question says, when should we start filling out the application for forgiveness? I do not recommend that now. Well, that's not true. So I think now is a good time to look at the forms so you can get an idea of the documents that you will have to submit with them. However, the banks themselves cannot submit the forms to the SBA, meaning that's when the portal will open for them to start. There are still possible changes coming to the forgiveness process. So you can download the forms, start getting all your ducks in a row, filling out whatever until the next vote, or I don't even know what to call it, until the next CARES Act update is approved or voted on or passed or whatever you want to call it. So whatever deadline there is for that, and I believe that's this week, then I would start looking at applying for forgiveness. But now is a good time to download the forms and the instructions to get all the documents in order, but I would hold off on submitting at least in another week. So if we do not have additional questions, I don't portion, but like I said, and if you think of any questions, you can type them in there and I will be able to reply via chat. Thank you all so much for your time today, and we'll see you again tomorrow and Thursday. Have a great afternoon.